Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today I am at the wheel of a 1999 Porsche Boxster. And it's very nice indeed. Now the problem with Boxsters is that they're small, light, manoeuvrable and fun, and you can get above the speed limit very quickly indeed, so I'll be keeping an eye on that quite a lot today. Now the Boxster, the baby Porsche, was a car that transformed the Porsche brand, made it more accessible, opened it up to a whole load more people than otherwise would have been able to get into a Porsche. And it rejuvenated, in some ways even saved the brand itself. But was a car that was a fraction of the price of a full fat 911 turbo really as good and as much fun to drive as the bigger brother? But there's only one way to find out, and this car is currently for sale on Bidding Classics, who is one of our sponsors, so a word from those sponsors and then on with the review. Oh yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Furious Driving, presented by Bidding Classics, the online marketplace for appreciating classic cars, with more cars added every week. And Diamond Bright, keeping the Furious fleet shining, and you can protect, clean and care for your car with 10% off site-wide using code FD10. Now, like Diamond Bright, Lancaster Insurance Services is a company I've been a happy customer of for quite some time. Lancaster are one of the biggest specialist insurers in the UK, covering all areas of vintage to modern classic car and motorbike. So give them a call and see if you can save on your cover. Follow the links in the description below. So the Porsche 986, or Boxster to you and me, came into the world in 1996, and it was the cheapest Porsche in the range by quite some considerable margin, but that did not mean it was any less of a car. The project's inception had been way back in the beginning of the 90s, 91, 92, when the new CEO of Porsche wanted something that would make the brand more accessible, make more people able to get into a Porsche, and at the same time the 928 was still a great car, but unfortunately very long in the tooth at that point, and even the soon to be released 968 was a warmed over 944 from many years previous as well. What they needed was something all new and all fresh and a bit different. So they put out a design proposal competition, and two designers, Grant Lawson working with Pinky Lau, came up with an interesting concept called the Boxster concept. The name stuck. And it drew very heavily on classic Porsches, great Porsches of old, the 356 Spider and Speedster, the 550 Spider. And it was beautiful, and it was shown at the 1993 American Auto Show, and it absolutely stole the show. People fell in love with the thing. The reaction was so strong that the design was more or less signed off there and then. By the end of 1993, they had frozen the design of the car. It was set in stone, although there were a few changes to be made, because as they went to tool up and sort out the packaging, they realised that there were changes that had to be made. Sometimes these things happen. At the same time though, Porsche was going through a bit of a financial crunch, and they needed to modernise their processes and make a number of improvements to become more profitable. And they've been talking to retired Toyota people to look at how they could make things more streamlined and more cost effective. And something they looked at was actually parts sharing. Now, whereas companies like Rover had to save money and they took the meat off the bone and they cheapened down components, Porsche did kind of the opposite. They made better components that they could use throughout their range, so they meant that the best part could go into the top-end 911 turbo and in the entry-level 2.5 Boxster. Much cleverer, much better way of thinking about producing a premium product. So believe it or not, this car actually shares a lot of components with the new 996, which came out very shortly after it. Right, let's pull in here and take a look around the interior. Okay, so the interior is very, very Porsche indeed. You'll see we've got all the swooping lines, the interlocking dials, all that kind of stuff. This is pure 911 and the playbook of the brand, which goes back a long way and has continued into the present day in many ways. Looking around the car from the outside very quickly, we'll talk more about this on the road, and I'll apologise for the condition of the car. I did stop at 3 different car washes and the queues were just immense. Everyone's washing their cars today, so but we have got a lot of very Porsche things going on. It shares a lot of parts with the 996, so we've got these fried egg headlights which almost condemned the 996 but absolutely make the Boxster. And we have these long sweeping flanks on the front, these big curved wings which echo the old 911s and 356s of old, and that kind of echoed again at the back of the car where the rear lights and the rear wings are a kind of a truncated version of the same style as the front. So very cool indeed. I was quite surprised at how big the Boxster badge is on the back of it. Very unusual for a car of the 1990s to be so eminent with its proclamation of what it is. This car's got a couple of small changes on it. It's got tinted out lights which look quite cool on the black car. It's also got a sports exhaust which you might have heard in the audio already. It's a little bit louder than standard, so certainly very noticeable. We haven't put the roof down yet, but we will do in a moment, probably. Looking through this window, you'll notice this is a bendable flexi window. A couple of years after this car was built in '99, they did actually change this, I think it's in 2003 revisions, to a solid glass window. Through that you can see the Porsche branded wind deflector, which makes things very, very civilised when you're driving. Let's go into the door itself. And this is so nice. This is really nice. It's actually quite firm leather. Nice hidden stitching. Nice matching tone stitching on there. And this tunnel style door handle, very much a Porsche thing. So you do get all the Porsche stuff, just in a much, well, smaller, more affordable package. We've got the nice leather door pull. We've got the carpet on the lower half of the door. The speakers down here. And the wing mirror adjustments up here on the top of the A-post. You'll notice it is a frameless door, so this glass does drop down a tad when you open the doors to get in and out. The storage bin is quite a curious thing because it looks like a tiny opening, but you can actually flip open this little top bit here and you do have quite a deep carpet-lined bin, in fact, so you can hide a lot of stuff in there. Moving into the car itself, we have got this lovely caramel leather all around the car, so it carries on from the doors onto the lower dash, onto the centre console, and of course the seats themselves. These are electrically adjustable seats apart from the actual forward-backward motion. And down here on the doorstep we have got openers for the rear trunk and the front trunk. Climbing aboard, as I say, we have got that fantastic Porsche binnacle with the rev counter front and centre, so you can see what the engine's doing and don't over rev it when you're actually really pushing hard. Speed is relegated to a little digital readout in the bottom, and of course this dial here on the left, which goes to well like 160-ish. Top speed of the car is actually 149. So yeah, that's actually using all of its space. And on the right hand side, got water temperature, fuel gauge, and a few other various readouts along the bottom. I absolutely love the font. It's the same cursive font they've used on the Boxster logo on the boot. So it does look pretty cool as it goes. Looking up above that, this is in its own little kind of separate ovoid pod, which is a bit like a 1990s Ford Focus. This is pure 1990s car design language. We've got lots of curves, angles, intersecting lines. Very, very, very 1990s in the best way possible. Then up on top of this dashboard, which I think is actually black leather by the feel of it, we've got these, again, interlocking ovoid circles for the speakers. So we've got a total of 6 speakers in the front of the car. And we've got a pretty decent tea shelf. If you're stopping for a cup of tea mid hot lap, you can pull over, have a cuppa on here, plenty of room for biscuits, sandwiches, you name it, you can have a snack up there, no bother at all. Moving back to the driver's area, our hazard warning light is a big chunky button here. Again, a funny oval here in this Ford Focusy bit. Let's not dwell on the Focusy stuff. Over to the right hand side, very curvy bit of dashboard going on just there, which gives us our air vent and our light switch just there. Ignition switch over here on the right hand side, very easy to see. And our steering wheel, lovely tactile firm leather thing. Little bit of crikey, that's a very delicate horn. That's a slightly too eager pop. Barely even touched it. So we have got these almost like alloy wheel shapes moulded into the wheel. 4-spoke thing, indicators and lights on the left, wipers on the right, and cruise control and dashboard functions down here. And this is of course an airbag as well, being 1999, that's stuff that's actually happening. Moving into the centre, we've got a big oval-shaped twin air vent thing. Then below that we've got our auto climate thingamajig. And then either side, this is a thing that they carried on to with the Panamera, the Cayenne, and lots of other things into the future. This kind of mirrored, slanted, angled thing. They've become a lot sharper in later years. But you have got the 3 buttons left and right for heated rear window, locks, roof, and 3 blanks on this side. In the later cars, they're all kind of down here in the centre console, just banks of diagonally opposing switches. I've got radio down here. This has been updated for something new. Oh, this is super cool. In a singled-in slot area, who knows what we could have had. We've got CD holders, awesome, because obviously it would have had a CD player, probably a CD changer as well when the car was new. Underneath that we've got a slot. This is exactly the right size for an iPhone 13, perfect. We've got our leather short throw gear knob, really notchy. This car's had a short throw kit fitted to it, so it's an even shorter, notchier throw than usual, so you can just snap through the gears really readily. Electric windows, more ovals, ashtray in the centre, and then 2 more blanking ones. Who knows what they would have done. Behind that, another little cubby, and then in the back of the car, lots of carpet and hidden storage. Look at that, tucked away underneath the wind deflector, little hidden safety deposit box. We also have the rollover hoop just here, which is nicely upholstered in the matching leather. We've got 2 more little carpeted cubby areas, so you can stow more odds and sods behind the chairs. There's lots more carpet in here. The whole thing, even though it's the budget end of the range of the Porsche brand, it does have a lot of very nice touches to make things feel very, very premium indeed. And one thing we haven't touched on are these seats, these fantastic, very thin-backed, quite narrow bucket seats. In this case, they're in this beautiful, delicious caramel leather, which is actually quite a hard leather. But it looks absolutely fantastic. You've got the perforations, you've got the stitching, you've got the patterns. It is a beautiful thing. One-piece back, integrated headrest, just fantastically comfortable, very sporty, very, very Porsche indeed. Now the roof, we haven't put the roof down yet, so let's pull this lever here, push that, pull that, and then trunk goes up in the back. I'll show you this midway through. So yeah, this deck lid lifts up and backwards, allowing the roof to slot in behind the front seats. Let's carry on with this manoeuvre, otherwise it's going to look very silly indeed. Done. And now we have got our open top roadster Porsche. This incidentally was the first Porsche designed from the ground up as a roadster, a soft top first. Now this does actually open up like a regular bonnet, and underneath there you've got a fairly deep, in fact very deep hole. You can stow a lot of stuff here in front of the narrow spare wheel. It's a deep, wide, get a suitcase or two, you certainly get a couple of carry-on bags in that, no bother at all. A lot of space, actually surprisingly practical here in the front. Moving around the back of the car, because the thing is actually mid-engine, the engine is impossible to see pretty much. All you can do is squint through these ducts, which again, very curvy, very 1990s. And you find the engine in there. And round the back we have got another boot. We've got our oil and water top up and measurement type things in that little pod just there, but the rest of it is just more storage. So more overnight bags, more shopping, more anything else. A really, really practical and usable arrangement because the engine, as I say, is in the middle. It's not as big as an estate car or an SUV, obviously, but as sports cars go, this is really rather good. Right, let's get this thing back on the road and talk more about how it drives. So although it wasn't a direct replacement to the 928, it was sort of a replacement to the 968 in a funny sort of way, and also obviously a new entry-level thing, but it was actually built in the same factory as the 928 in Stuttgart, but also they built them in Finland as well. There was a lot of demand for these things. Very, very popular. In fact, it was the most popular car Porsche had ever built until the Cayenne SUV came along. Ooh, Unimog. It's always a good day to see a Unimog. Now on the road there is one important difference about this car over all of its other Porsche, and that is the position of the engine, which is in the middle. This is a mid-engine Porsche, and that means the weight distribution is absolutely fantastic. It's so finely balanced through corners. You just hold it on the throttle and it just stays exactly where you want it to be. The nose feels so light and the wheels just so perfectly, well, communicative for one thing, telling you exactly what they're doing. But also just so well balanced. Oh, check that Audi out, nice. Now obviously this car has slightly more wild exhaust, which does drone a touch at sort of 40 miles an hour, but when you're pushing the accelerator hard, it sounds fantastic because it's got that fabulous Porsche flat 6 engine. It has the 2480cc 2.5 litre flat 6 engine sitting in the middle of the car. There's 201 horsepower, 245 newton meters, which I believe is about 180 foot-pound in the old money. It really is just perfectly weighted, perfectly everything, really. It doesn't really put a foot wrong. They say that 911s are the perfect all-round supercar, but honestly, if you don't want to be spending that kind of money, you really can't go wrong with this. And another first for the Boxster was it was their first water-cooled engine that wasn't in the front of a car. Prior to this, they'd only put water-cooled engines in front-motored cars. Now this generation, the 986, ran from 1996 until 2005 when it was replaced by the 987, sensibly enough. Now, although in many ways the M96 six-cylinder engine is the heart of the car and something that gives it an amazing amount of presence and character, for the first couple of years it was also its Achilles heel, because these did suffer with quite a few problems with the blocks and the cylinder linings being an issue. Interestingly, Porsche took the decision to, rather than replace those engines, to bore out the blocks and re-sleeve the cylinders, which kind of proved they were an okay engine with a slightly different manufacturing parameter. Then from 2000 it became a 2.7 and of course the 3.2 litre S, which was a bit of fried gold. Now the thing about a Porsche is that people who've never driven one might well sneer at them and say, oh, you know, it's a rich man's toy. It's all show and bluster. There's nothing special about them. But the fact is, once you've driven a Porsche, you suddenly appreciate them a whole lot more. Everything from the way they go down the road to the build quality to the noise they make, everything just feels right. The way you sit low with your legs out in front, proper classic sports car feel. The feel of the steering, so light with no little weight at the front, yet so connected, not vague at all. The way it rides like a luxury car but drifts through corners like a sports car. It does everything as well as you could possibly hope it to. As I mentioned at the beginning, this car is currently going for auction on Bidding Classics, and although it's got a couple of defects on it, it drives so nicely. I have to admit, I'm a little tempted myself. It feels slightly surprising it's only got a 5 rather than a 6-speed gearbox, but at the end of the 90s, that wasn't really much of a thing, even on the most exotic cars. And then into the noughties, 6-speeds tended to be reserved for high-speed diesels, so those low-revving turbo diesels could, you know, crank up to higher speeds and cruise more quietly. The idea of putting a 6-speed in a sports car didn't really occur until a couple of years later. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this drive out in this Boxster as much as I have, because I have absolutely loved it. Now I know that if you're shopping for Boxsters, the 2.5 is often regarded as the one not to go for. It's the least powerful, and certainly for the early years, it was the one that wasn't that reliable, thanks to the engine problems. But this particular one's a 99, so by this point, they'd figured out how to recast the engine properly. After 1999, the engine problems went away. And you know what? This one is so sweet, it drives so nicely. It'd be hard to find one that drove much better. If you've enjoyed this video, please, as always, hit like and subscribe, and join me again next time driving something completely different.